Hey everyone, how's it going? Thanks so much for tuning in. Today, we're going to be taking an in-depth look at our 1969 Chevrolet Chevelle Malibu sports sedan. This video marks the reboot of the Chevelle Resto Mod series, which up until recently I haven't posted anything about because, to be honest, there wasn't anything to post about. We had to come to the very difficult decision of taking a whole lot of steps back to move forward. Obviously, we're starting with another car. And I've covered all of that already in a very in-depth update video that's already on the channel. The link to it is down in the description box below. It will catch you up to where I'm currently at, and you'll be able to understand the goals that I have moving forward with building a wicked sweet four-door Chevelle. So anyway, link is in the description box below. Thank you guys so much for all of your continued support. It really means a lot. As with all of my reviews, I'm going to cover all of the ins and outs and take this thing on a thorough drive. Of course, there's a whole bunch of stuff to cover, so without further ado, let's go ahead and start her up and let her run. The Chevelle was Chevrolet's mid-size car between 1964 and 1977. Over that time period, it would span 3 generations. This car slots within the second generation, produced between 1968 and 1972. In '69, Chevelles were offered in 10 different body styles ranging from 2-door coupes, a convertible, and a variety of 2- and 4-door sedans. On top of that, there were a dizzying array of options, from convenience and luxuries to engines, transmissions, rear ends, and even suspension configurations. The level of a la carte customizability offered across the range was something we just don't see anymore. That being said, I've tried my best to structure this video around the sports sedan specifically to keep things focused and as accurate as possible. For '69, the Chevelle was marketed as America's most popular midsize car. Despite the all-new '68 models, '69s saw some pretty significant styling changes, including new front and rear fascias with updated lighting, grills, trim, and bumpers. Other changes included smaller side marker lights with the fronts indicating engine size, updated interior trimmings, and a new dash layout. The sports sedan was unique in that it provided 4-door convenience without sacrificing the Chevelle's characteristic appeal. All sedans rode on a 116-inch wheelbase, which was 4 inches longer than coupes. Overall length for the sedans was 200.9 inches, again 4 inches longer than coupes. The 76-inch width and 59-inch front and rear track widths were shared between all body styles. The only other dimensional difference is height, with the sedans measuring 53.3 inches. That's 0.7 inches taller than coupes. Everything from the A-pillars forward is identical between sedans and coupes. The trunk lid and tail panel are also shared. It's the middle where things are really shaken up. In general, the sedan's roof was unique, as were the C-pillars and most of the quarter panel structures. The coupe's roofline was more steeply raked and sporty, featuring a unique rear window flanked by flying buttresses and more sculpted C-pillars. The sports sedan sought to bridge the gap with frameless doors, no B-pillars, more sharply angled C-pillars, and chrome frames for the front door vent windows. There was another model that shared this body style too, called the Concours sedan. It was upfitted with special exterior trim, color accented lower body moldings, special interior trimmings, unique upholstery, partially carpeted door panels, and more. It was the more luxurious offering. The Malibu trim for the sports sedan was equipped very similar to a Malibu trimmed coupe. The lower portion of the body and tail panel were painted in argent silver. Dividing the silver and main body color were unique stainless body moldings. The interior trimmings were nicer as well. This Malibu sports sedan had a base price of $2,745 plus a $76 destination fee. Options on this example include a soft ray tinted glass, a vinyl roof cover, air conditioning, a 255 horsepower TurboFire 350 V8, Powerglide automatic transmission, power steering, full wheel covers, white wall tires, and an AM push-button radio. As equipped, the total original MSRP was $3,798.85. As far as colors, sports sedans were offered with 15 different options to choose from. This car is finished in champagne. All coupes and sedans were offered with a full vinyl roof covering. Black or parchment vinyl was available with any body color. Select body colors were also offered with midnight green, dark brown, or dark blue vinyl. Come to find out, this car was originally equipped with a dark brown roof, which was an $89.55 option. The previous owner had the roof redone, but in black. The sports sedan came standard with 14 by 6 inch steel wheels, as did all Chevelles aside from the SS models. Of course, with Chevrolet's a la carte options list, there were additional wheel options including rally wheels and different styles of wheel covers. The base setup would have been dog dish covers that only covered the center portions of the wheels. These full wheel covers were a $21.10 option. The tires on V8 cars were slightly wider than those fitted to the base 6-cylinder cars, 7.75 by 14 or 205/75 R14 in modern terms. White wall tires were an additional $33.45. Chevelles came standard with 4-wheel manually operated drum brakes. Powered drum brakes were optional. 11-inch powered front disc brakes were also optional. This car has the standard manual drum setup, which consists of 11.5-inch drums in the front and 11.9-inch drums in the rear. In terms of braking performance, it does surprisingly well, but there is noticeable fade after repeated hard use. The pedal feel is soft but firm, if not a bit vague, but I like how stopping is proportional to how hard you're pressing the pedal. It's essential that the drums are adjusted just right, otherwise stability by braking can be noticeably affected. To be honest, this is one of the better all-drum setups I've driven. Even though the drums don't bite as hard as discs, they do a good job at bringing the car to a stop. This generation of Chevelle rode on a full perimeter frame, with the welded steel body bolted up top. The frame carried welded front and rear cross members. Hardtops and sedans in particular rode on an open side rail frame that resembled a C in its cross section. Convertibles had stiffer boxed side rail frames to compensate for the lack of a steel roof. The sports sedan actually has additional underbody bracing when compared to a standard sedan to help stiffen the body structure, being that it did not have B-pillars. The front suspension was an independent setup that consisted of upper and lower control arms with ball joints, gas shocks, coil springs, and a link-type stabilizer bar. The rear suspension was a live, conventional solid axle located by trailing arms and diagonal upper anti-torque arms, coil springs, and gas shocks. Additional heavy-duty suspension packages were offered, likely dependent on the body style and/or model, which included an array of stiffer springs and bushings to a thicker front anti-roll bar and the addition of a rear anti-roll bar. This car has the standard suspension. Like the brakes, it's really not comparable with anything as of late. When cruising, the suspension is very supple, as if you were riding on a cloud, but it cannot handle a corner like a modern car. There's a ton of body roll and side-to-side motions that makes the car feel detached from the road. While pretty typical for its day, it's a stark reminder of just how much suspension technology has advanced over the years. The steering consisted of a traditional steering gearbox and a center link that's supported by a pitman arm on the driver's side and an idler arm on the passenger side. The tie rods connect to the center link. Manual steering was standard. Power steering was optional. This car has power steering, which makes a heap of difference in how easy it is to drive the car. For its day, it offered quick and precise control. It still exhibits some of that today, but it's a far cry from modern rack and pinion systems. The downside with these earlier power steering systems was how incredibly vague they could be. This is one of the most relaxing cars I've driven simply due to how easy it is to steer, especially at low speeds, but there is no feel whatsoever, and the feel is no different whether you're going slow or fast. Having driven plenty of old cars over the years, I'm pretty used to how it feels, but it can be quite unnerving for someone who's used to driving newer stuff. The steering column in this car is not adjustable, although Chevrolet did offer one that could be tilted. Back in the day, most vehicles did not have an interior hood release. It was done at the front. With this car in particular, the release is within the bumper. You pull the handle and simultaneously lift up the hood. Across the Chevelle lineup, Chevrolet offered 7 engine and 5 transmission options. The standard engines included both 140 horsepower and 155 horsepower turbo thrift inline 6 cylinders and a 200 horsepower turbo fire 307 cubic inch V8. This car was ordered with the Turbofire 350 cubic inch V8, which, for an additional $68.50, developed 255 horsepower at 4,800 RPM and 365 pound-feet of torque at 3,200 RPM in its standard form. Of course, those are gross numbers, which are more or less determined when the engine is out of the car, at the flywheel, and without any accessories. The actual net power at the wheels would have been less. The small block V8 engine was built using cast iron for the block, heads, and intake manifold. It featured an overhead valve pushrod design with hydraulic lifters, a compression ratio of 9:1, and a 4-barrel Rochester Quadrajet carburetor. For more power, you could also opt for a higher compression 350 V8 that produced 300 horsepower and 380 pound-feet of torque with the same power band as the standard 350 V8. While not offered in sedans, the top-tier engine options were a pair of 396 cubic inch big block V8s, with your choice of 325 horsepower or 350 horsepower versions. All Chevelles in '69 came with a 20-gallon fuel tank. Fuel economy is not great, not that you would expect it to be, but I've yet to actually try and do a calculation. The fuel filler is located behind the hinged license plate. A clever design, but it's a little inconvenient on this car as it's mounted down low, so you kind of have to crouch when filling up. Along with the array of engine choices, Chevrolet offered a bunch of different transmissions. Looking at the 350 V8 transmission options specifically, you had a choice between 3 or 4-speed floor-shifted manual transmissions, a 2-speed Powerglide automatic transmission, or a 3-speed turbo-hydromatic automatic transmission. This car has the Powerglide, which is a $174.25 option. When fitted with the standard bench seat, Chevelles equipped with an automatic had a column shifter. When bucket seats were ordered, you could also opt for a console-mounted control lever, which was pretty cool. The biggest difference between the Turbo-Hydromatic was the fact that it was a 3-speed instead of a 2-speed, helping improve drivability and overall fuel economy. At the time, the Powerglide was one of the most popular options. As the name suggests, the car just glides down the road. It's as far away from sporty feeling as you can get, but it's also the most relaxing setup. When you pull the shifter into drive, the car automatically starts out in low gear and will automatically shift into high gear once you start to pick up speed. Almost always, while you're at speed, the car is cruising in high gear as if it were a single-speed transmission. I've had this car at highway speeds, and while I wouldn't want to run it like that for a long period of time, it's amazing how quiet and composed the car actually is. Burying the pedal at speeds between 40 and 60 miles an hour will cause the transmission to temporarily drop back down into low gear for greater acceleration if needed. You can also pull the shifter all the way down to low as long as you're going less than 40 miles per hour. Low locks the transmission into low gear for hard pulling through sand, snow, or mud, and for climbing or descending steep grades. The rear axle is a hypoid semi-floating type that was offered in a wide range of ratios. You had standard, economy, performance, and even special axle ratios available that ranged between 2.56 gears to 3.55 gears in non-SS cars. The 10-bolt differential in non-SS cars came open, but it could be upfitted with posi traction. My favorite part of this car is the frameless door design. To be honest, there's nothing sporty about the Sport Coupe in terms of differing driving dynamics over other Chevelle sedans. It was all about the added style on an otherwise practical family car. The frameless doors with the windows rolled down allowed for an open-air experience that would only otherwise be possible in a coupe. Generally speaking, the Chevelle's interior was smartly designed and straightforward. There were a ton of a la carte options to upfit the interior however you wanted, including things like cruise control, a speed warning indicator, and much more. You basically selected what body style you wanted and went from there. Aside from any model-specific differences, the basic interior design was all the same. The sports sedan, for example, shared the same front door panels as the standard sedan, but the rear door panels are unique in that the top portion extends forward to cover the top of the B-pillar structures. For its day, the interior was quite nice, especially with the Malibu trim package, as it struck a nice middle ground as far as premium trimmings, being much nicer than a 300 Deluxe but not quite as glitzy as a Concours. The doors are upholstered in supple-grained vinyl and feature built-in armrests. Manually operating door locks, windows, and vent windows were standard. Vacuum-operated power door locks were optional, as were electric power windows. The lower dash was painted metal, but the upper portion was finished off with a padded topper that spans the full width of the car. Padded A-pillars complemented the topper. The floors were lined in deep twist carpeting. Portions of the floors, doors, firewall, and roof were also lined in various forms of sound and heat insulation. Bright metal and silver-painted trim decorated the interior without being gaudy. The design of the instrument panel favored the driver, as all of the controls were grouped logically within easy reach. Chevelle sedans were only offered with a sliding bench seat up front that featured a one-piece backrest. The standard bench seat in a coupe would have had a 50-50 split folding backrest for getting into the rear seat. Coupes were also offered with the option of sliding, tilting bucket seats, along with a center console. Despite being classified as a mid-size car, the Chevelle's interior isn't as big as you might think. I would even go as far as to say the interior accommodations, at least with this car, are more similar to today's small sedans. Driver and front passenger head restraints were standard, along with both lap and overhead shoulder belts. In this configuration, the Chevelle was able to sit 6 passengers. Malibu sedans were fitted with a combination of cloth and vinyl upholstery. Color options included black, as shown here, dark blue, medium green, midnight green, or turquoise. You could also choose an all-black, all-vinyl interior. The previous owner had the bottom cushion of this car reupholstered with all vinyl, but we'll have to match all that stuff back up at some point because I can't stand the mismatched upholstery. This car has the standard instrument cluster, which is pretty basic. The only needle gauges are the speedometer and fuel indicators. Everything else operates via warning lights. Certain models, including Malibu-trimmed V8 cars, could be upgraded to a more comprehensive cluster that included an electric clock, tachometer, and needle gauges for the ammeter, temperature, and oil pressure indicators. Hideaway windshield wipers were standard on Malibus. When not in use, they sit below the hood line for a cleaner look. When flipped on, they swing up into action. The wipers have 2 speeds. There isn't much in terms of dedicated storage space. A lockable glove box was pretty much it. There's a cigarette lighter to the right of the instrument cluster and a large ashtray beneath the dash. In 1969, Chevrolet's Astro ventilation system became standard. On coupes, this led to the elimination of the front door vent windows, which certainly cleaned up the look. The sedans retained the vent windows. Astro ventilation basically took air coming through the cowl and forced it through the dash vents and kick panels as a way to provide more controllable interior ventilation, especially if you didn't have air conditioning. The latter was a $376 option in this car. The controls are easy to use, positioned in the middle of the dash above the radio. A rear window defroster was optional. The AM push-button radio in this car was another option, $61.10 to be specific. It plays through a single speaker in the middle of the dash. It features tone adjustments and the ability to mechanically program preset stations. Other options included an AM/FM stereo radio and even a deluxe 8-track tape system that included 4 speakers as well as both tone and balance adjustments. The rear seat is where the design of the sports sedan really shines. The frameless doors give a much greater impression of space and general openness, despite having the same interior dimensions as a standard sedan. The rear bench seat is super basic and is able to sit 3 people. However, it's pretty tight trying to sit 3 adults side by side. The middle position is narrow and there's a high driveshaft tunnel that would have to be straddled. These back seats were not offered with head restraints like the front. Rear lap belts were standard. Coat hooks were mounted up in the headliner, and there was a single light in the middle of the headliner for illuminating the interior at night. The rear seat, like the front, feels like an overstuffed couch. There's a lot of give and not much support. You just climb in and sink down. Even though the interior is not exceptionally roomy, I'm able to sit in the back just fine, being 5 foot 10 inches, with good headroom and decent legroom left over. Sitting in the back is such a cool experience with all of the windows rolled down. As I touched on earlier, with not having the B-pillars, the rear door panels are actually a little different compared to a standard sedan. The top portion of the panels extend farther forward to meet up with the front doors. It's a pretty neat detail. The doors also feature built-in armrests just like the front, but back here, being a product of the times, you have individual ashtrays as well. A new safety option for 1969 was a child safety seat, which could be fitted pretty much anywhere you had access to a lap belt. The second generation Chevelle had one of the roomiest trunks in its class. Standard opening of the trunk had to be done with the key. Remote trunk release and power trunk release systems were optional. The trunk lid is counterbalanced, making it effortless to lift and close. Inside, there's 12.8 cubic feet of cargo space. The trunk floor is flat and wide. It kicks up at the rear but levels off, allowing you to stow things up to the back of the rear seat. The spare tire mounting allows easy access and removal, as well as convenient placement of the bumper jack. Its location does take up valuable cargo space though. Instructions on how to use the jack can be found on a sticker affixed to the trunk lid. The inside of the trunk was sprayed in black and white speckled paint for a finishing touch and added protection against rust. A trunk floor liner was standard. An optional lighting package, when equipped, would add lights to the trunk lid, hood, and various additional areas of the interior so you can see easier at night. Well everyone, that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Please don't forget to leave a like down below because it really helps the videos a lot. And if you haven't subscribed already, consider doing that too and make sure those notifications are turned on. More Chevelle content is coming up soon, so you don't want to miss out. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.